It's still happening. Rap tag still going on. I'm just kidding, guys. It's Joe here from OmniPOke. And no more rapping. I think we have all agreed on that. It's Joe back for another just good old-fashioned deck profile. It's Monday, so we're doing a standard deck profile. Today it's going to be Aromatisse Giratina. I think this is a pretty good way of utilizing Giratina in the standard format, so let's hop right into it. Basically, we're going to be using non-EX Xerneas as our sort of opening Pokemon to set us up in the early game. It has such a useful attack in Geomancy. For a single Fairy Energy, we get to choose 2 of our bench Pokemon and attach a Fairy Energy from the deck to each of those. So obviously it's a great way of accelerating from as early as the first turn of the game, which is absolutely fantastic. It has this really respectable 130 HP, and this is actually a big deal against things like Manectric. They struggle to one-shot Xerneas, which is actually really nice, especially because we can come in and use its second attack, Rainbow Spear, to do a cheeky 100 damage, which is actually really good. 100 damage with that Muscle Band, it means we can actually kill Regice, so that really is not a problem for this deck at all. Manectric Regice is actually quite a favourable matchup for us, because we have this Rainbow Spear plus Muscle Band to kill the Regices really easily, and then obviously Giratina is favourable against the Mega Manectric, so this should be an easy matchup for us, and it's a popular deck in format right now, so it's good to see. This Xerneas has so many uses. Like I say, that nice HP, not only in that specific matchup, it's going to help us out in the early turns to take a hit or two while we set up our board. Because this is a slightly slower build of Giratina, unfortunately. Jack's already profiled the Turbo Tina, where you're trying to get Chaos Wheel, sometimes on the first turn, but more often than not on the second turn. In my testing for the Fairy deck, it's more likely that you look for the second turn / third turn is more realistic for this deck. So we have to take a couple of hits in the opening turns, and Xerneas helps us do that quite nicely. It has a 2 retreat cost, but we do play Fairy Garden in here, maxing out that count, so it shouldn't come in too much of a problem for us. So it's the Fairy Engine, as we all know. Aromatisse is the main card in this sort of Fairy Engine, what makes it work. We have the Fairy Transfer ability. We can move Fairy Energy around all of our Pokemon as often as we like during our turn. And playing Double Dragon Energy, it means that we can actually Fairy Transfer Double Dragons from one of our Dragon types to a different Dragon type, which is really awesome because it means we can retain energy on board if something's going to die. And we've seen in the past, Fairy decks used to just max potion off everything. That's actually out of format at the moment, unfortunately. But we still do have AZ, so we can pop that card back into our hand and play it back down as if it was a max potion, but we've had to use our supporter for the turn. But it's still very awesome for having this healing effect. And like I say, the Geomancy setting up energy on the board. Once we get Aromatisse into play, we can move that energy and focus it all on Giratina to try and get that Chaos Wheel going as quickly as possible. So a 90 HP stage 1 Fairy type with just such a powerful ability. So we're playing the 3-3 count here to get it out as often as, or as fast as possible, I guess. So here is Giratina. We all know what it does by now. The Renegade Pulse ability really gives us good matchups against stuff like Mega Rayquaza. And combining that with the attack Chaos Wheel, it means that Mega Ray can't even one-hit us if they play a Hex Maniac, because we're not going to allow them to have Skyfield in play. And Chaos Wheel is going to continue to deny that. So even if they play Hex Maniac, you still got to think you're favoured in that matchup. Obviously, Renegade Pulse is good for all other Megas as well. Stuff like Manectric, maybe even Tyranitar or Sceptile if people want to play those decks. Renegade Pulse is going to be awesome. Oh, and even Groudon. Groudon isn't the strongest player anymore because of Giratina, I would say. It was one that I was going to actually profile. I've been testing it a lot last week, but it just couldn't get over Giratina. It was too much of a hurdle for it, so... yeah, Giratina's ability, absolutely fantastic. And then this Chaos Wheel is also great utility for us. 100 damage is decent. We're going to be two-shotting things in our path, basically, for that double dragon cost to fulfill the Grass and the Psychic. And then we've got 2 colourless energy to sort of... they're going to be our Fairy energies, basically. So they could be anything, but in this deck we're choosing the Fairy typing. Ironically, it actually has a weakness to Fairy, so this is one good thing about the deck that we're playing. We can use, again, this Xerneas becomes a great attacker because Rainbow Spear can one-shot Giratinas in the mirror matches, And again, that big HP comes into play because they can't respond with a Chaos Wheel and knock us out in a single hit. So the idea of this deck is to have a decent matchup against other Giratina builds, as well as, you know, have healing against these other decks and try and lock your opponent out with these Chaos Wheels every other turn. So the reason why Giratina is so good in a Fairy type deck, it means we can keep our Fairy Garden in play for like super flexibility across our whole board, and denying special energy and stadiums and tools, it's going to be really detrimental to decks like Night March that rely so heavily on double colourless energies. Night March was once one of the biggest issues for Fairy decks. Look at things like Gardevoir that would just get sometimes just run through thanks to Night March setting up too quickly. And Giratina being able to deny their double colourless energies, sure, you might go down a few prizes early on against these Night Marchers, but if you can start getting the Chaos Wheels going, you're going to start denying knockouts, and then you just need to like Lysander around when they're doing their single attachments to win you the game. Similar story for things like Vespiquen and Raichu. They really are very reliant on special energy. They can play things like Bronzong, but it does sometimes lower consistency, and again, that's just going to be a Lysander target for us at some point in the game. So overall, Giratina gives us great typing. He's just such an inherently strong card. Trying to find the best way for him to play, and at the moment I'm really enjoying this Fairy build around him, because it also means we can play a couple of cards like these. We do have the one Hydreigon. I'd sort of have it in here for a 4th Dragon-type Pokemon, just to have it chilling on the bench, so that when we need to use our AZ and heal up a Giratina, we can move the Double Dragon onto Hydreigon. It's very helpful. The Dragon Road ability can be helpful as well. Sometimes in the mirror matches, when we're going to get Lysander stalled on our Giratinas, it means we can't put our own Fairy Garden back into play, so having the Dragon Road can help us move Giratina for just a single energy, rather than it being a sitting duck for a couple of prizes, which is quite nice. And also this Shred Attack, it can be quite useful. I've already said that we can run through Regices in more efficient ways, but this is an extra out to hitting Regice. We can also shred through stuff like Aegislash for 80 or 100 damage if we have Muscle Band. And we can also hit Pyroar as well. Hydreigon's the only Pokemon in the whole deck, other than Aromatisse, but you really wouldn't want to do that, that can hit into Pyroar. Fortunately for us, Pyroar can't one-hit Hydreigon's back, so as long as we keep this one Hydreigon healthy, we should be able to run through a few Pyroars at least, and then maybe catch a kill to get our final prizes in that matchup. Although Pyroar's not that relevant right now, it's still good to have an out to it, and a single card in the deck providing that is pretty useful. We also have one Lugia EX in here. It again can be quite useful in mirror matches because we can stack up a big Aero Ball. We know that Giratinas love to have a lot of energy on them, so being able to take full advantage of that is very helpful. This Deep Hurricane as well is a great finishing move. One criticism of other Giratina decks is that sometimes if your opponent sets up something that can one-shot you, the Giratinas sort of aren't doing enough damage, so maybe midway through the game or in the late game, we can move whatever energy we've accumulated on our board onto a big Lugia and do either a huge Aero Ball for 2 prizes or a Deep Hurricane. With that Muscle Band, we are hitting 170, enough to kill a lot of regular EXs in format. And because we are mainly using Giratina, it's going to sort of put people off going into their Mega Evolutions. So we're going to see a lot more just regular EX Pokemon like Lugia here. So Deep Hurricane is going to be even more effective at getting those one-shots, which is amazing. Lugia has this nice resistance as well. It's going to help us out against things like Mienshao. That's still floating around, but we have so much healing in this deck, and it really isn't too much of an issue for us overall. Also, we can just stick with Giratina regardless to prevent them using Focus Sashes and Strong Energy and stuff, so we've got good matchups there in general, but having this resistance can help out now and again. So yeah, Lugia is really good for that, and it's also a great out for Aegislash. I've already said that Hydreigon can shred for 100 or so damage, but sometimes getting a big Aero Ball and just wiping an Aegislash off the field is a much better option, so that's something to bear in mind as well to help out our metal matchups. Finally, we're playing 2 Shaymin EX in here. With the ability set up, we all know what it's all about. Trying to get us more cards as best we can. Yeah, pretty simple there. One thing that I've chosen not to play in this deck is actually a Hooper. You can see we are playing 4 different EX Pokemon, but usually the bench space is a little bit too tight for this deck. I feel like maybe if you wanted to play one Skyfield, you might want to throw in a Hooper, but it's starting to get kind of techy at that point, and I prefer just having a straight build right now. I just like to demonstrate that there are different ways of playing this build, and I am still working on it, as I say. So here are the trainers, very, very simple, very basic. 4 trainers mail, trying to get as consistent as possible, basically. We have a fairly low supporter count in terms of draw supporters, so having these trainers mails to seek them out is really going to help us here. Maxing out the Ultra Balls as well, helping us lower the hand size for Shaymin, get more Pokemon. Getting the Aromatisse is very important, and to get full usage out of Geomancy, we want to hit these Pokemon to get them on the bench as quickly as possible. So maxing out Ultra Ball, pretty standard there. Also maxing out the VS Seeker. The AZ is one of the crucial cards so that we can do our healing play. Basically, we transfer all of our energy onto a different Dragon-type Pokemon and use that AZ on the one that we want to heal, and then go into the new Pokemon, or we can just retreat back into the Giratina that we just healed thanks to the Fairy Garden. So that's the combo that we want. We only played 2 AZ, so VS Seeker is going to help us recover that. And of course it's going to help us grab all of our other supporters. We play a lot of 1 and 2 obs in this deck, so VS Seeker very helpful. Here are some of the supporters. We are playing 1 Ace Trainer. This is again a bit of a Mienshao tech. It's also a tech against these Night Marchers and Vespiquen, because often they are going to take prize leads against you. And we're going to try and slow them down a bit. With so much locking in the deck as well, they have quite a few dead draws, and if you're Chaos Wheeling after an Ace Trainer, you know, a lot of the cards they're drawing into, they're not going to be able to play, so that's very good for us. Ace Trainer, pretty helpful here. Yeah, 2 AZ, it's one of our most crucial cards. Also in mirror matches, like I said, the Hydreigon's in here. The AZ can be a means of switching, which is quite important because we can't play down our Fairy Guns all the time. So AZ is going to be helpful there. We have got a Lysander. Lysandering things up that we've hit in the face for 100 or so damage with the Chaos Wheel, so that we can finish them off is quite important. Also, Giratina with Muscle Band can Lysander to kill Shaymins. That's pretty important for finishing off our games, so Lysander's going to be very helpful throughout, as we know. A couple of Fan Club just works so well, getting up our Geomancy targets. Also just sets up the Spritzee and whatever other attackers that we need as quickly as possible. As well as sometimes we can have the space to grab a Shaymin for some more cards as well, so I like having a couple of those in here. I'm playing a 2-1 split of Birch and Shauna. I do actually like splitting this in this deck. I feel like Birch is slightly outclassing Shauna in this list specifically, but because we are maxing out the VS Seeker, I feel like we may as well have the combination of both. There are times where you would prefer a safe Shauna than a coin flip of a Birch, but hitting that heads is just quite nice. I think statistically Birch is getting you 5.5 cards every time you play it, so it is just on average better than a Shauna, but like, just in my own personal opinion, getting that 4 cards is just so horrible sometimes. So that's the reason I have 1 Shauna in here. But on the flip side, you know, 7 cards is really good. It's probably one of the best supporters that we have if it would always flip heads. So yeah, we've got a couple of those in here. And then we're maxing out the Sycamore. Always getting you 7 cards is pretty nice. Discards can be quite painful in this deck. You don't want to discard things like Double Dragon, maybe some of our tech cards if we want to hold Lugia in hand and not play it onto the field. It can be kind of painful, but for the most part, we need to just sort of speed through the deck sometimes and just dump and draw to get into our setup. So it's sort of a trade-off that we have, and overall, he is the most powerful supporter that we have. Stadiums, I've already spoken about it a couple of times. With maxing out the Fairy Garden, it means we can retreat out of these bulky guys. If we start with Giratina or Hydreigon, we can freely retreat with a Fairy Energy, or if it is one of these Dragon types, we've already attached one of these specials to them. We can move out of the active that way as well. Helps us get into our Geomancy as quickly as possible, which is important. It's basically just very helpful for moving between attackers. So yeah, 2 Muscle Band in here. It's, like I say, very, very important actually. I might have to make room to find a 3rd in here, because it makes good math for killing Shaymins. It makes great math for killing Regices with Xerneas. A couple of great reasons why this is a very good card, so need to have a couple of these in here. They are quite a precious resource, but we can obviously reuse them sometimes when we're using our Fairy transfer shenanigans. So then we have 4 Double Dragon. It is a very, very crucial card in this deck to keep us Chaos Wheeling every turn. So we got to max this thing out. And then we just have 8 Fairy Energy. There's quite a few hammer-based decks going around at the moment, so when we do eventually run out of Double Dragons, if they are going to just hammer spam us, we still do have the Lugia and the Xerneas who can attack, so having a fairly high count of Fairy Energy is still pretty important. And of course, trying to get the Geomancy off as consistently as possible to pull these out of the deck is really going to help us out in the long run, so I think 8 is the right number there. So that is the list, and let's jump into a few games now. So it looked like we found a game against the Last Jedi. And we are going to flip some coins. And we get to go first. Which is pretty cool. Let's see what we start with here. We start with a Xerneas, which is amazing. We also have some decent other cards in our hand. Including Ultra Ball and a Shaymin. So pretty nice start for us. And we see a Golett and a Bronzor. Don't often see that combination of cards. I'm going to start off with the Trainer's Mail here. And we grab a Fairy Gun. I think I'm going to hold off on it. So we can get more from Shaymin here. We're going to Ultra Ball away both of our supporters. And I think I just want to grab a Giratina here. I could also go for the Spritzee actually. I think Spritzee is not a bad idea as well. Get that one set up first so that we... it means we have like an extra turn to find Giratina. But if we find the Spritzee first, we can obviously evolve next turn. So that's pretty nice. We actually end up finding another Spritzee, which I will play. I'm going to hold off on the other Xerneas for now, and I'll just attach to the active. And do I want to Sycamore this turn? I think I kind of want to hold off, because this Aromatisse is very tempting, and we won't be attacking with Giratina anyway, so all we need to do really is like refresh our hand next turn, so not too much emphasis on getting too much set up, so we can just pass. So, our opponent's going to play a Pokemon Fan Club. And they're going to grab themselves a Shaymin and another Golett. Our stadium does get replaced by D-Valley, so that's good that we actually held on here. Our opponent's going to set up, finding themselves another Bronzor. And then we're going to get hit with Smash Punch, which actually flips tails. So does nothing, which is kind of nice. We can evolve into Aromatisse here. I still think I want to keep bench space, so this Xerneas is just going to be sacrificed. I think I'm happy to attach to the Spritzee. I can move it around later if we find better Pokemon, so we can now just VS Seeker for this Sycamore. And looks like we missed Giratina, but I do hit Ultra Ball, so I think I want to... I definitely want to letter this turn. We can grab another VS Seeker, which is going to really help us out here. It means I can dig for Tina this turn, which is kind of nice. We do have to be slightly wary of the fact that our opponent is playing potentially some metal types in here. Obviously an issue for this fairy deck, so I'm gonna fairy transfer one onto Giratina and then use Geomancy onto Giratina, and I think also this Spritzee. It's kind of vulnerable to the Golett, but I think putting it to the Shaymin is just too nice, and putting it to the Aromatisse. Putting it onto the Spritzee means like they've sort of wasted a Lysander if they do go for it. Because there's such better targets on our bench, so I think this is the safest way to sort of spread our resources around. So here is this Golett. It has the stop thing. That's not going to come in too handy, but that HP is going to be frustrating for us. The attack shouldn't be too bad, because we're going to be able to heal off a lot of the damage sometimes. So our opponent also searches out a Bronzong and then uses AZ to pick up their Shaymin to replay it for a setup for 5 cards. We see another Golett come onto the bench, or get evolved, I guess. And we see another double colourless, I think. Okay, superpower is all double colourless energy. Didn't even realise that. Then we see a metal links to the bench. And we get hit for 120. Which is pretty cool from our opponent, at least. So this turn we're going to be able to develop Giratina, which is nice. And we're also going to be able to refresh our hand. This Fairy Garden is not going to be important as long as we can continue to use Chaos Wheel turn after turn. So I'm not too worried about discarding that other one that we just did there. I'm going to get rid of the Ace Trainer and the Birch just so I can find another Giratina, because these things are going to be out of one-shot range from our opponent. So it's going to be where I want to place my Fairy Energy. So let's retreat into Giratina. And let's Fairy Transfer onto our benched one. So that's basically ready to go once we find another double Dragon Energy. I think I can hold on to the Trainer's Mail for now. And we're going to go for that first Chaos Wheel. Doesn't look too important right now, but it might be stopping the flow of this Golurk, which is going to be useful in the long run. Our opponent plays down a Pikachu as well, so they're playing Raichu in here. I think their goal is to try and hit for weakness. The Psychic weak Pokemon, like Lucario, Fighting weak Pokemon like Manectric, and then Lightning weak Pokemon like Rayquaza, and then using Bronzong to try and stick it all together and make it work. So we can go for a Trainer's Mail here. I was digging for an AZ really there, but we did miss. We only hit Shauna. So it might be that I'm just retreating into our other Tina this turn. We have a lot of supporters in hand. And we actually have to be fairly conscious of our deck size at this point. I think I'm actually going to be tempted to go for the Birch here. But because I'm not digging for too much, I think Shauna's slightly better. Yeah, let's go for Shauna. Double Dragon would be the best thing I want to find here. And we do indeed find that, which is nice. Let's place that onto our other Giratina. And we will retreat. Fairy transfer the double Dragon Energy onto this one. Because we're kind of safe, basically. I want to leave this Giratina, who's basically like a 2-prize target. Keep him out of harm's way. I think I'm happy to keep 5 energy on here. Do have to kind of be worried of like a random Mewtwo popping out or something, but I think overall we're safe to Chaos Wheel here. Especially because we deny like double colourless energies coming on to like a Lugia. Should I say Mewtwo? I meant Lugia. I don't know. I can't remember if I said the right one or not. But our opponent goes into Pikachu now. Something to worry about is actually a Nuzzle, but they do evolve into a Raichu, thankfully. And we've not been able to find any AZs yet. This is a bit of a problem for us. And that normal problem of not letting me look at the discard pile. Fantastic. I know we've not played AZ yet, though. And for some reason our own timer is going down as well. Okay, we see a retreat into the Raichu and a pass. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to continue to develop, I think. Again, we don't find ourselves any AZs. That's really what I'm looking for. But because this Giratina didn't get damaged, I think we can just happily smack him with a Chaos Wheel. You can see it's already disrupting our opponent. Interesting that they went into the Bronzong rather than the Bronzor for the sort of sacrifice that turn. Our opponent plays an Ultra Ball, getting rid of a couple of supporters it looked like. And what can they really do here? They're in a bit of a spot. Obviously, they've got such an emphasis on double colourless energy to get set up. They do just evolve into another Bronzong and play a Shauna. They find another Golett and another Metal Energy and just actually pass into the Shaymin. And we actually find an AZ, which is pretty good timing here. One unfortunate thing about AZ is that you actually discard the tools, which would be amazing right now. Do I actually want to dig for another muscle band here? I think I'm just going to scout to see if it's in here. Thinning our deck as well in case we get hit with like an ace trainer. So it looks like we haven't got muscle band in deck, so I think I'm just going to take a Shaymin. So really, if we go for this, like, we could go for 2 prizes this turn and be sort of aggro. Or we could AZ, heal up, and sort of wait a turn. I think healing is definitely the stronger play. Like, even though 2 prizes is so tempting, our opponent hasn't got 2 more prizes on the bench to sort of finish off the game for us. So, I think it's still best to just heal. And our opponent's going to have to find like a way to switch and attach. So now I'm going to attach a bunch of energy onto Giratina because it's our safest play. And we can go for Chaos Wheel. For just 100, we can sort of slow play our opponent based on what they're really doing, which is basically not much right now. We see a Golurk, and then we see an Ace Trainer. And we get into a pretty nice hand. There's not much we need though. I mean, look at our board setup. So much energy in play. 2 Giratina basically waiting to go. So unless we start getting hit with hammers, I'm not too worried about anything right now. So our opponent's deck concept isn't actually that bad, even though it looks like kind of a weird deck. Having weakness on 3 of the most popular archetypes in format, I imagine this probably racks up quite a few wins. Just not against Giratina, unfortunately for them. Do I need to keep attaching? I guess it doesn't hurt. So we can now, this time, just do the Chaos Wheel. Again, don't want a Sycamore because it sort of backs myself into a corner by us lowering how many cards we have left in deck. It's something that you have to be a lot more conscious of now that we don't have Lysander's trump card. We can no longer play in the YOLO days. So our opponent does find a 4th energy for this Golurk, so they're going to be able to use Superpower this turn if they really want to. They're going to play an Ultra Ball, finding another Bronzor. And we do see a retreat into that Golurk. And we get hit for 120. So we can fairy transfer all of this off. We actually found another AZ, which is just comical. I mean, when have you ever seen this much energy on the board? It's just madness, really. We can AZ. Go into Giratina. I mean, it's like a Keldeo. It's just so ridiculous. I think a Lugia isn't too bad here. But again, I think we've got our opponent in such a strong position that we can just continue to Chaos Wheel here. Let's move some of these energies back. Let's move 3 of our double dragons back, I guess. And 1 fairy. And just go for Chaos Wheel. I know it's kind of more boring. We probably know the outcome of this game already. And you think, yeah, just YOLO Lugia, kill this guy off, and take a prize, and then we just need 1 more to win. But this is just the safer route overall. Like, we could have allowed our opponent to DC a Raichu again because we were no longer locking, and then they can take 2 prizes on the Lugia, and then straight away they're back in it from what they pull off the prizes. These are things we don't really want to factor in, so we get Ace Training again, but it's really not going to matter. I mean, our board is so dominant right now. And we do get hit for 120. We once again can AZ off. I don't think I even want to, just out of pure laziness. Let's just retreat and attack. I know it's really bad of me to do this, but we're going to win regardless, so I know it's not very nice to say that, but this is like the most dominant of a board I think I've ever known in Pokemon. I think we have 13 energy in play technically. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 13 energy in play. Our opponent retreats into the Raichu. They can double Metal Links this turn and single attach if they have enough energy to actually get a Golett going this turn. Which is kind of cool for them, but really, that's all they can do. Let's have a look here. Our opponent's using an Ultra Ball. Can't imagine what they can find to really change the game at this point. If they had a secret tech for Giratina, they probably would have brought one out earlier. So, we'll see. We just see a Shauna. And at last we see a Scoop. I think that could have come like 4 or 5 turns ago, really. But there we go. A good win for Giratina there. Against a deck that, yeah, it didn't have a very good matchup against us. But what really does have a good matchup against Giratina? That's the whole idea of this deck. We denied our opponent double colourless energies, which of course was going to be crucial for them. And using that AZ to heal off as well meant that we were able to 6-0 our opponent, which is pretty cool. And it meant that we were able to keep 16 energy on board, I think I counted. 13 energy, excuse me. Getting ahead of myself. 13 is, you know, just an average day in the office. But yeah, there we are, guys. Joe from OmniPOke signing off. You might have been able to hear a bit of coldiness in my voice. If there's any coughs or like inhales or something, or sniffles, I can only apologise. But like I say, I'm under the weather, and I thought you guys still need to have this content. So yeah, I'll see you next time, guys, for another deck analysis. See you later.